You share?
We'll share. Great.
All right.
Thanks.
It's late in the afternoon, and because we missed our Monster Energy power break or something, we really need Pearl. We really need to build that into the next program. Energy shots, I love it. We'll try and keep this real and a little bit different. So, the most difficult question ever asked in a panel is what we're gonna begin with. That is to introduce yourself without talking about your job or who you work for. And I'll go first. So, although I'm going to break my rule already, I'm a dad. I actually work for them most of the time, so maybe that doesn't. I broke my rules, but I'm a dad. I am a retired wannabe professional cyclist, and I am. I got a little glimpse of this earlier, but I am pretty fascinated just by human psychology and why we do the things we do. So it's very cool.
Also a proud dad, young family, 5-year-old son, 1-year-old son, and another son coming on the way in January. So, yeah. My poor parents, between me and my brother, they now have 5 grandsons. So this one's definitely hope to be a girl, but again, as long as they're healthy. Originally from outside of Boston, I've called Las Vegas home now for 8 years. So, it's awesome.
I'm trying to make my parents proud. Right? We came to this country. We're an immigrant family from Ukraine, Eastern European Jews, religious refugees during the fall of the Soviet Union, coming to America. There's a lot of pressure on me being the oldest son and making something of myself. And I hope I'm on the trajectory of making and keeping them proud. And now also my nuclear family, my kids, my wife, all of that, living the American dream in the best way that I possibly can. Yeah.
I too am a dad, boy dad as well. Not as boy dad as you, but 1/3 of the boy dad as you are. I am interested in purpose, both in my own life, but also people who drive and strive to do purposeful things. That tends to attract my energy and attention. I also am constantly in the pursuit of what comes next. Some would say that's a Leo in me. Some would say I'm impatient. But I just always think, and it's relevant in this room as marketers, but I think in life as well, yes, live in the moment, be in the moment, but also plan for what comes next. And as pertains to marketing conversation, I've always been really obsessed with what the next thing that will work is before everybody figures it out. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell. My name's Charles, if you guys didn't get that.
Thanks, Charles.
From the board.
So I asked a maybe not so hard question. For now, my first actual question feels like the hardest pivot ever, which is a miss. We should do a panel on parenting and marketing and advertising. That would be really fascinating. Maybe a whole focus of an event.
Congratulations, you're not sharing that. No.
Oh, okay, sure. And we've got a lot of sponsors, I'm sure. So for this afternoon, or through the day, we talked a lot about fandom and culture, had a lot of different brands up here. But you've already gotten a shout out about your team and franchise. But let's start a different way at this. So you've come in, you're a relatively new team. You're 6-7 years in.
This is our 8th season.
8th season. So relatively young. Shout out about even from a Kings fan, you have the best experience. I mean that's huge. What kind of stereotypes or preconceived notions thinking did you that you had to work through to create that type of epic fan experience? Or maybe it was just branding franchise and it was just hey, this is what we want to do. But there's got to be some things that you faced that I think there's broad applicability to those kinds of challenges, whether you're a sports team or in any other brand.
I think for us in Vegas, we really had a unique canvas to work off of because being a hockey team in Las Vegas where it gets to be 115 degrees in the summertime is a bit of a paradox in and of itself. But we had the support and buy-in from our ownership and the top of our organization to really think differently. And just because the other 30 at the time NHL teams did things a certain way, we were empowered to think and proactively do things differently. And so where our brand story came from and where it evolved from is really leaning into what people expect when they hear the word Vegas, or the characteristics, brand traits of the city of Las Vegas, and that's the energy, the liveliness, 24-hour town, the type of music, the nightclub vibe, and we've really brought that into our game day experience at the Vegas Golden Knights. And then with our name being the Golden Knights, we also have these medieval elements tied into, which you wouldn't think Vegas tied in with medieval would work in a kind of a cool way, but we've been really able to, people expect a spectacle when they come to Las Vegas, and we've been able to create that just with the moment you enter T-Mobile Arena to even when you go walk around the concourses, and just the music, the energy, the vibe that we try to bring in there is something that we strive for. And despite the critiques that we might have received at the beginning, we were steadfast in that belief and that commitment that we were going to do things differently. We're going to do things genuine to that brand that we were creating, and a lot of that is inspired by our city.
Awesome. Just sounds like there was just this moment, both the city and the high expectations for people coming here and being entertained. It sounds like from a leadership perspective, like that was the mandate.
Yeah, there was a priority set on to be the best in-class game presentation, and not just our league, but all of sports. And so the investments were made there, the resources were given from our ownership and our executive team, and we were able to bring in a very talented group of individuals that were able to bring that vision to life.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Charles, when we were talking, you were come talking through your philosophy. A couple things that come to mind is like all media is social media, all of it's rooted in community. Intro, talk about purpose that feels like really endemic to who you are. Like, what are any kind of lessons that you've seen from what Eric's got going on here, or things that you're working on that you feel like could be incorporated into this kind of building something differently, building something that's entertainment, community, purpose?
Yeah, so I'm not going to speak for or even try to paraphrase Eric, but when he said think differently, one of the things, as somebody who went to a Golden Knights game in the very first season, the inaugural season, and it looked and it felt different, what's called think differently, I think maybe was just like be comfortable being a little weird, right? Like do things in a way that captures attention, because in 2024, it's damn hard to like attract attention, keep attention, and then expand that attention. And the philosophy that we function with at my shop, which we affectionately term social out, is this understanding or this realization that all media is social media, because all media, to reach a full level of efficacy, is going to at some point have to lean on social media to do some of that lifting. But also that social media culture is going to permeate culture at large. So there's been an underinvestment for a long time with a lot of brands and those that service and support them in what I call the 3 Bs. That's budgets going towards best practice social marketing, bandwidth, and then just people, really bright people, focusing their energy and attention towards the thing that commands attention, whether the conversation's starting there and being amplified outwards, or starting elsewhere, and you're using social as the bullhorn to push that out. And I saw it, in real time with the Golden Knights, right? Because at first it starts off with what the hell is going on over there, and the clips are, circulating around social, and then that's followed by team success, and now, I think you guys are one of the best success stories in the league. I'm a Houston Texans fan, and we've been waiting for 20-something years to even make the playoffs. You guys got a championship already. So, I think the takeaway is be comfortable, and I think as marketers, sometimes, getting out there, being comfortable, being a little weird to get that attention, and knowing that that's the thing that's going to lead to that waterfall of earned media and amplification, and really serve as that rising tide that raises all your collective channel ships, if you will, regardless of what channel you're activating on.
Okay. So if I summarize both the two of you and the comments you made, it's into like 2 words. It's sort of be different, act different. Vlad, if I pretend like these two are your clients, right? You've got one over saying like, we're gonna, invest in this entertainment experience. We're, all these magical things are gonna happen in an arena. These things are all really expensive. And you got Charles over here is like, the hell with traditional media. It's all social media and put it in other places, and it's got to feel good and be purpose-filled.
I don't think that's it, exactly.
No, I'm exaggerating. What I'm trying to do here is like we've all sat in those rooms, or we've been the ones pitching it. I've been pitched many times exactly what I just kind of set up for you, and what sometimes missing is how you ground that in things that are measurable or not measurable, or how you put that together. And like, let's just pretend like these two are together as your clients. How are you advise them to kind of think about near-term and short-term goals, measurement, but still help build, this wave of community and excitement that they're passionate about?
Great question. So first and foremost, as I'm going to give you an artistic answer, then I'm going to give you a scientific answer. As an artist, I am really, I get really jazzed up when I hear about the amount of fandom and loyalism and community that your brand brings, and the folks that we're talking previously bring, and obviously that follows along with your thesis within the fifth. There's a quote that I love, and with my team, excuse me, I talk about it all the time. It's from Maya Angelou, and she says, at the end of the day, no one's going to remember anything you said, or let's add it to marketing terms, or the activation you did, or the money you spent. They're going to remember how you made them feel. And it's really hard to put like a price tag on that, because that feeling permeates generations. Now you have, I was talking with the gentleman that does the Monster business. All the brands that were big when we were kids are now big again, and now there's like a nostalgia to it, and they're bringing their kids into it. And all of that is impossible to quantify. And that's also, now I'm going to move to the scientific answer, that's also the challenge, the existential challenge that the marketer has with the finance department within any organization. I don't care how loose your purse strings are, how deep your war chest is, you always have to have an accountability and a responsibility to show some type of correlation between the investments that you're making and the impact, the financial impact it has on the business. There was a lady, the lady speaking earlier, that's the CMO of the Las Vegas Tourism Board. They're talking about heads and beds, and they're talking about economic development, and they're talking about all these different types of things. That is super hard to calculate. In my line of work, what we're doing is we're tying media exposure, paid media exposure, to sales impact, and we're doing that in real time. But the implication is that if you think of it from that lens, you think about, well, then that means any media investment I made needs to lead directly to sales. And that's actually not the case. It's actually very far from the case, including you as a creative and the creative that you make. If you were judged by how many AT&T products you move, that would be insane. Brand equity, brand lift, preference, loyalty, any of those measurable attributes are incredibly important. But the challenge since the dawn of time for advertising is, how do we link that to financial metrics? And to be able to show all of that lift that you've accumulated through one campaign or a number of campaigns in sequence, how that lift has a contribution to sales downrange, that's where the magic is. And that's where I think this industry, especially as I sit on these panels and I listen to these types of things, there's more and more outcomes-oriented conversation, but outcomes aren't necessarily financial in nature. And the better we can tell that story as marketers, the better off we're going to be with our financial counterparts that are sort of frenemies in some instances.
Yeah, I love the heart and mind answer to that. How does that resonate with you as a CMO?
That's a challenge, and that we're being pressed more and more to be able to demonstrate that ROI, if it's even just a digital campaign. But oftentimes the financial folks don't understand the impact that the awareness part of the funnel can play, and also just that brand affinity that you are having difficulty measuring at some time, but it's coming through these investments. Looking at the Golden Knights example, is that those clips that are shared of our in-arena show, and to John from EA Sports, who was talking about earlier, that younger audience that isn't necessarily following specific teams or more following players, but I would also add to that I think they're following brands too. And we've seen so much engagement amongst the younger audience, and because of the show. They watch our pregame show on YouTube, or they know the Vegas Golden Knights because of our pregame show. So how are you able to fully measure that when you're talking about the investments you're making in the technology, the investments you're making in your cast of characters that are interacting with these fans? It is difficult. So that definitely resonates and captures a lot of the conversations that we have within the front office of the Golden Knights.
Okay. So there's a lot of alignment, a lot of alignment here, just about those. And we've heard this a lot today, just about building, creating experiences, content that can reach not just the fans in a stadium sitting in a seat, but also those everywhere else, right? I think if I heard the stat right, only 2% of F1 fans have ever been to a race, but it's one of the fastest growing, most popular sports. It's interesting. So if let's ask a little slightly different question. This is just for all of you. If you were building, and you're kind of already doing this, but if you were building a winning organization, one that really believed in community, connecting with your fans wherever they are, like, what are a couple of attributes that would be must-haves out of that back office team, that management team, and what are maybe one or two items that would just completely disqualify somebody on that team? Let's start right here, because I'm really interested from that more purpose, artful perspective, like things that must have, and things that are like, you're out.
Yeah, it's funny you use the word purpose, which I guess I used earlier. But I think here in this conversation, it actually has a dual meaning, right? Purpose in terms of what you're doing and making sure that the tactics and executions that you're carrying on have rhyme, reason, measurement behind them. That's why you're doing them. But as we start to look at younger audiences, they actually care about purpose, like a brand doing purposeful things. Like, what are you doing in the world? What are you saying? What does your brand stand for? So I think the first thing you need to do is understand that your audience is a collection of multiple niche audiences, right? Because, and in some of the sports work we do with some of the legacy brands that have been around for a very long time, they're very solidified up here, and they have those older fans who have always rooted for the brand, and they will live, breathe, die by what the shield, the logo does. But then they have these younger fans who you get their attention differently. You don't speak to them the same way. You don't speak to them in the same places. You don't even attract them with the shield itself or the logo itself. It's the players, it's what the players are doing, it's the content the players are putting out, and those types of things. So for me, when you talk about the people who's there, who's responding to this very unique challenge, I would say, authenticity, which every single one of these conversations is, a highly overused word. But where I like to go with that is to say, authentic conversations can only happen where familiarity exists. So the people who are there solving the problems, and we speak a lot to Gen Z. A lot of folks come to us because they want to crack TikTok and they haven't cracked it yet. They want to crack Snapchat and they haven't cracked it yet. And you know what I did? Well, I go and get younger folks who live, eat, and breathe what's going on the platform. They can sniff a trend out when it's coming. They can sniff out something that is not authentic at all, because that's how the audience that our brand partners are trying to talk to are going to respond and react to the thing. So I just think that the conversation of knowing your audience and representation within your organization so you can actually speak in an authentic way to that audience is super meaningful, because I can't tell you how many times we've had the challenge of we've been trying to speak to this audience for a very long time and they're not listening, and then we go in and we say, well, you're not having the right conversation. It's not that they're not listening, you're not having the right conversation. So representation in terms of how you're trying to solve for that challenge is really important.
As Charles was speaking, there's something that a marketer once told me that I think is really interesting. So I want to expand a little bit on that.
It was one time a marketer said something.
I remember quotes. I like quotes. And this quote, what he said was, listen to your customer, but don't believe them. Right? Someone might say, oh, I eat super healthy, but then you open up their cupboard and they're not eating healthy. And for a brand to authentically speak with their customer, who they want their customer to be, it's oftentimes not enough to do a focus group or like ask them questions or doing that survey technique. It's important, certainly. If you're shipping a product and you're not asking your customer about it, then you're going to be sorely upset when you finally release it. It's like agile product development. But going beyond asking them questions and truly actually just observing their behavior and what makes them tick and what they say versus what they do, sort of like a Myers-Briggs test. They'll ask you the same question. It's 200 questions, but it's really like 30 questions. They'll ask you that same question in a bunch of different ways to get to that like actual truth of what you mean by what you say. I think about that, and my heart goes out to modern marketers that have to speak with fans, especially in the fragmented environment that we're in, to be able to get to that element of authenticity. It's harder than ever. There's a metric that the average consumer on a daily basis is exposed to 10,000 different forms of advertising, especially if you live in an urban environment, whether that's the solo on your cup or that's the billboards that you see or the pen in your hotel room, 10,000 different logos. And to be able to break through all of that clutter is harder than ever. So actually, I would love to ask a question to you. You guys are a sexy brand, certainly, and with all the success that happens as well. How are you all breaking through that noise? There's lots of teams out there. There's F1, there's this, there's that, there's this. What type of effort do you guys put in to breaking through and actually resonating with your target market?
It's certainly challenging, but I think what we've really doubled down our efforts on, and it goes back to the authenticity buzzword, is just being true to who we are as a brand and as a team and what we stand for. So we want to be known here locally as the local team. So for those of you who don't know, the Golden Knights, we were an expansion team that was formed, born, and raised here in Las Vegas, the first professional team that the city ever had. So we're realistic. We know that the marketplace has gotten a lot more crowded even here locally. We're never going to be able to compete with the Raiders in the NFL in terms of revenue generation and viewership and sponsorship dollars. We know that the WNBA Aces have been extremely successful here. They've won 2 championships back to back. And the rise of women's sports continues, rightfully so, to become more and more popular. You have races and events like Formula One here in town. The Super Bowl has been here. WrestleMania is coming. Really, any major event is coming or has been to Las Vegas since the arrival of the NHL and the Vegas Golden Knights back in 2017. In addition to that, you have all of the entertainment with the residencies here in town too, which again, your pick of genre, you're going to be able to find that here too. So for us, it's, again, what is it goes really through a fairly basic marketing process where it's what is our differentiator? What makes us different? What do we do better than our competition here locally? What makes us different from our competition here locally? And for us, it's 2 things. One, we're the first team that was here, and we are the team that wasn't relocated from somewhere else. So that's what we're doing here locally. As in terms of our regional and international aspirations, we utilize what our city offers. We have 44 million tourists that come through here per year. So how are we reaching and how are we utilizing the platform that our city gives us to bring in new potential fans, visitors, tourists to be able to experience our game? Because we do have a strong belief that if you do go to one of our games, it's unlike any other NHL experience and really unlike most experiences in pro sports. So we're confident that if we can get you into our building, that's going to lead to kind of further brand interactions down the road and hopefully brand affinity down the road.
If I could really quickly, I think sports is such a fascinating place to look at modern marketing and what it looks like and what best practice might be, right? Because it is one of the few places you can build actual, not just brand affinity, but brand love. Like people love the teams they cheer for. Let the Kings score a goal on you before you score one of them. You might not think it because the comment section goes crazy. But the question is to get to, kind of the nuts and bolts of how do you get investment to do the things that are great for brand, but also great for performance, because that's really hard, right? And what measurement what metrics are we leveraging? I know in social, like we do brand lift studies and affinity studies and econometric studies. There's so many things, so many numbers that you can throw out. And it's like, how is this actually impacting bottom line? So I think for every organization, there needs to be a, coming to the table and understanding that what are we trying to build? Are we investing in really elevating the brand, knowing that there's a lot of benefits for that later on down the line? I think for most sports teams, a few certainly don't have this, but you guys do. Once you have a really tight brand that the city is behind, there is a whole lot of benefit of investing and building in that. And you like to think that it's a simple enough conversation to say, hey, if we just expand the top of the funnel awareness, like of course, Mr. or Mrs. CFO, a lot more is going to come down the bottom, but you don't always get that outcome when you're having that conversation. So I know for us, it's been a lot of investment in what are the tools of measurement so we can have those conversations, because again, the under investment is usually on the social side because the folks who are cutting the checks often see that as a brand play and not so much a dollars and cents play.
I think we got a couple minutes left. Got time for a question in the room? Please.
Yeah, I got one. So you mentioned a little bit about fan engagement and that you leverage a lot of Vegas, the city, to bring in fans. I would imagine that a lot of that's more transactional type of relationships. They're coming in, they want to have an experience in Vegas, they want to go to F1, they want to do this, and maybe they'll pop in for a night's game, and maybe they're a fan or not. How do you then take advantage of that maybe transactional relationship, like the first initial part of the lead funnel, and bring them and turn them into a fanatic?
Yeah, that's a good question, and one that we're challenged with, because we have this other kind of push and pull where our hockey operations team wants us to have the best home ice advantage in the league, which to accomplish that, you need to have your diehard fans in the building, and so it needs to be a local audience in there. So if we're marketing, if we're trying to bring in those transactional fans, so to speak, how are we still accomplishing that objective of having the best home ice advantage in the league? So on the flip side of that is as we're looking to grow our fan base, and we're comfortable too, because again, going back to the earlier point about us being an expansion team, in Las Vegas, of course, being a very transient town, there's a lot of people that are born and raised here, but there's a lot that are from the East Coast, they're from the Midwest. So we were comfortable being the kind of your second favorite team. You're going to root for the Chicago Blackhawks, but you can live in Vegas now. You've lived in Vegas for 20 years, so the remainder of the games you're going to be able to root for the Golden Knights. So we've kind of embraced that as well, where people love coming to Vegas, and if you're here and it overlaps with checking out one of our games, again, going back to that unique fan experience that we're offering, we believe that if you are a Bruins fan, Flyers fan, Tampa Bay Lightning fan, if you're out here for a conference, for an event, for a bachelorette weekend, come on through. It's going to be a good time. It's going to be different, and hopefully you start following and paying attention and come visit us again.
One more, please.
You've been fortunate enough to not face this issue, but as a sports marketer, how does your job change if your team is bad?
Yeah, I mean, look, I haven't brought that up yet, 30 minutes in, and missing the playoffs one time in 8 years and making 2 finals and winning 1 championship certainly helps the market. Let's be honest here too. Yeah, but that's hard. I think that's where you really need to, the efforts that you've made on the BI or data analytics and being able to use those types of tools to find additional fans, find fans that may have not been to a game recently, and be able to produce offers to bring that back in is really what we're preparing ourselves, kind of future-proofing us, because we know that we're not going to be making it to the final every other year too. So making sure that we have that fan universe size that we're going to be able to lean on during those lean times. So we're realistic about that. We're not preparing for a doomsday scenario by any means, but we are realistic that we certainly have been buoyed by the success on the ice, but how are we capitalizing that, and how are we utilizing that to position ourselves for success even when the team success isn't where it's been recently.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. We could go on, but I think our time is up. We can talk more over dinner.